Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wolf Pit with another episode of Eating on a Budget. Pork and beans, are they even a thing anymore? When I was a kid, we ate them all the time. Nowadays, I don't see anyone eating them. And they couldn't just be any can of pork and beans, they had to be Van Camp's. I never really cared for the Campbell's or other brands. When I was a kid, pork and beans were a staple in our house. We had them out of the big can at dinner, and we never took a road trip without packing fried chicken, hard-boiled eggs, and of course, little cans of pork and beans. Back in the 70s, there wasn't a fast food restaurant at every other exit going down 95. So if you're taking a long road trip, you better pack your lunch. That way you could stop at one of the roadside picnic tables and have lunch with your family. Yes, I said a roadside picnic table. There also wasn't a whole lot of rest areas. Some of my younger viewers might think that sounds primitive, eating cold fried chicken, cold hard-boiled eggs, and pork and beans out of the can on the side of the road. Can you imagine the look on their faces when you told them these roadside picnic areas didn't have electricity, or hand sanitizer, or you had to go to the bathroom in the woods? I'm in no way poking fun at my younger audience, it's just funny looking back at how much things have actually changed. I'm sure my older audience will relate when I say it was times like that that made our childhood so great. And I know some of you might have favored the Beanie Weenies over the pork and beans. So I had to give them a quick shout out for all the weenie lovers. But I wasn't in that group of weenie lovers. I love the pork and beans much better, especially if I happen to get 2 pieces of pork in my little can. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make my version of homemade pork and beans. These pork and beans are not only nutritious, fulfilling, and delicious, they can feed a whole lot of people for only $6.94. I would say 8 people or more, which I know it will feed that many, but if I say that for sure, I'm going to get some donkey telling me that they can eat the whole pot of beans by themselves. Which if you can afford to eat until you're full, that's perfectly fine and you're very fortunate. But there's some people out there that can't eat until they're full and may only get a cup of food so that the rest of their family can eat, or they can save some of the food for another meal. And that's why I'm making these videos, for people that are truly struggling to feed themselves and their families with very little money. And they're eating to survive, not just to eat. But these recipes are delicious and anyone can eat them. So here's what you need to make the pork and beans. A 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes, 1 fresh bulb of garlic, 1 large yellow onion, a 2-pound bag of dry pinto beans, and a big pack of smoked pork neck bones. As you'll see later in this video, you can use any kind of smoked meat you like, but smoked pork neck bones are going to generally be the cheapest. But this time of the year, a lot of people have hams. So if you're at a family gathering and they're having a ham, offer to do the dishes and ask them if you can take the ham bone home. And that's free, and you save $3.25 on this meal. But unfortunately, not many people are going to give up their ham bone. So if they don't, get whatever smoked meat or smoked bones you can afford. Just not one of these. You'll have your dog doing the backstroke in your pot, and they're not fit for human consumption. But all jokes aside, if things are super tough and you don't have enough to buy a piece of smoked meat, then use your imagination to add flavor. You could use leftover bacon grease, a couple bouillon cubes, a chopped up leftover hamburger or a hot dog, or some of the dry beans come with a packet of ham bone seasoning. Besides love, sometimes your imagination can be the best ingredient you put in your dish. The first thing we need to do is rinse and drain our 2 pounds of beans, and sort through them and see if you find any rocks. I've been cooking beans for a long time, and I've honestly never found a rock. But as soon as I say there's no rocks in there, someone's going to break a tooth. So just be cautious and check the beans. So once your beans are rinsed and drained, add them to a large pot and cover them with a couple inches of water. Then bring the pot up to a boil, put the lid on the pot, turn the heat off, and let the beans sit for an hour. That's the quick soak method. You can also do the overnight soak by just covering the beans with about 2 inches of cold water and just let the beans soak and rehydrate overnight. Both methods work exactly the same, just one takes a whole lot longer than the other. After the quick soak method, our beans are ready. Not ready to eat, but ready to cook. If you tried to eat them now, you would certainly not enjoy them. And here's the great debate, to drain the bean broth or leave it. All of that bean broth is a one-way ticket to Flavor Town, and if you drain it, you're going to miss your ride. That would be like pulling the skin off a fried chicken. It just makes no sense. But some people are going to argue and say if you drain the beans, it takes all the gas out of the beans. And my reply to that nonsense would be, why would you want to drain the fun out of the beans? It's better than dinner and a movie. Where else can you take your family out to eat and have fun for $6.94? So if I add something in here that you don't have or that you don't like, use something else you have handy. Personally, there's one thing I hate doing when I'm cooking, buying something for a specific recipe just because the recipe says you need it. If you're only going to use that ingredient for that recipe, then it's a waste of money. But if it's something you can use for other recipes, then it's an investment. But if you're really struggling with money, worry more about buying the food than the spices. If you have salt and pepper, you can make anything taste good. Like I said before, recipes are a guide, not a rule. So use your imagination and use what you have. So I've added a few bay leaves, a little bit of cumin, black pepper, a little bit of chili powder, granulated garlic, our canned diced tomatoes, and our chopped onion and our chopped garlic. Now for the smoked pork and these pork and beans, like I said in the beginning of the video, you can use any kind of smoked meat you like. So I'm just using the leftover breastbone trimmings that I trimmed off a whole rack of spare ribs when I cut the ribs St. Louis style. This is a great way to multi-purpose your meat, so you're actually making 2 meals out of 1 rack of ribs. So that just turned that $13 or $14 rack of ribs you fed your family last week into a $6.50 to $7 rack of ribs. And these rib trimmings have a ton of meat on them. So add all the meat and bones to the pot. And if you noticed, I haven't added any salt yet. And that's because in my experience, if you add salt before the beans are actually soft, they never get soft. So add your salt to taste at the end. Once the meat's been added, add a little bit more water to cover everything up. And then give it a real good mix. And then bring it up to a boil, cover, reduce the heat to medium-low, and then let it cook slowly for a couple hours, making sure you stir it about every 30 minutes or so. And if it looks like the water is getting low, add a little bit more. While our pork and beans are simmering away, head on over and follow me on Instagram if you want to see foods I cook and eat and other random things that I do that I don't record, and you might even get a sneak peek at an upcoming video. Now after 2 hours, all the meat is falling off the bone, and our pork and beans are almost ready. So remove all the bones and the meat, and then pull all the meat off the bones, and discard the bones and any excess fat if you like. Now look at all the meat that came off the rib trimmings. I've never opened up a can of pork and beans with that much pork in there. Now add all the boneless meat back into the beans, and give it a good mix, and let it cook for about 15 more minutes. And there you have it. Hearty, nutritious, delicious, homemade pork and beans that'll feed your whole family or a crowd of people for only $6.94 if you buy all the ingredients. If you can, cornbread or a couple slices of bread would go great with this. And we can't forget about the free entertainment factor. That's simply something you can't put a price on, especially when it's free. Whether you're struggling, on a tight budget, or very wealthy, this is an inexpensive, very satisfying meal that anyone can enjoy. One meat that I almost forgot to mention that you can add to the beans, especially around this time of the year, is the turkey carcass. If you are fortunate to have your own turkey, you will already have the turkey carcass and you can add that to the beans. Or if you go to a family function and they're having turkey, ask them if you can take the carcass home. And it doesn't really matter whether the turkey was roasted, smoked, or fried, it'll add meat and flavor to your beans. And by the way, fresh jalapenos are only $1.48 a pound, so one fresh jalapeno is going to set you back about 10 to 15 cents. Thank you all very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with your family and friends, and I'll see you soon.